It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running here on another edition of Musso at the box. Welcome in and glad to have you along for the ride. We inch closer and closer to opening day for LSU baseball. Of course, that's Valentine's Day, February the 14th against Purdue Fort Wayne. Leading you up to that, we have kind of entered our call it a series previewing kind of different position groups, different position battles for LSU. We have hit infield, we have hit outfield. Today, we focus on the catcher position, which I feel is still the most highly contested and undecided battle for LSU as they approach 2025. They're breaking in 4 new catchers. We'll go through all of them here over the course of the next 25, 30 minutes or so, kind of tell you where they stand, how they've performed in scrimmages. We touched on it a little bit, but we'll go much more in depth here on this show as it focuses solely on the catcher position and kind of what it might look like come opening day for LSU. Also, preseason all SEC teams announced today by the league office. 4 LSU Tigers honored. We'll tell you who they are. A little bit of a surprise for me on a couple of them. But we'll get to that, of course, towards the end of the show. So smash the like button if you have not already. Get subscribed if you have not already, both to the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. That way you can take us with you wherever you may be. Follow me on social media. Of course, those are scrolling on the screen below you. And let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get right into it because there is a lot to go through with the catcher position. Obviously, as I kind of said right there off the top, LSU is in a unique position where they are breaking in 4 new catchers. Everybody else is gone. Like no more Milazzo. Brady Neal hit the transfer portal. He's at Alabama now. Hayden Travinski's out of eligibility as well. Like you're breaking in 4 new guys, and that brings its own challenges. Obviously, in just terms of pairing those guys up with the pitching staff, having a staff get acquainted with new guys handling them, and you're having a position battle at the same time. And that obviously is going to factor into that battle and who takes the role full time is, the comfortability with the pitching staff. But what kind of makes that interesting as well is you have so many new faces on the pitching staff too. Nate Yeskie spoke with the media a week ago and kind of likened it to breaking in a new offensive line in football, right? Having a quarterback get familiar with a new line. Said, look, they're making progress there, and it's been a fun process. But anytime I hear LSU coaches talk about catcher, there's clear patterns in the speech, and it makes sense once you get eyes on them as well. The catchers, that is. One thing that has been very consistent anytime the catchers have been brought up is that Cade Arrambide is the first name out of everybody's mouth. I mean, and for good reason. I mean, the type of prospect he is, what he's done with the bat, like, it makes a lot of sense. But it's followed up with very glowing accounts on everybody else as well. And you could be looking at it and going, okay, well, yeah, coach speak, again, it's kind of like we talked about a day ago with outfield, 8 guys, that can go out there and play with no drop off, whatever. And like I said, actually, to some extent, I actually believe that with the outfield. And you can be thinking, oh, they're not going to, run down any of the catchers and keep confidence up. Like, oh, yeah, this guy can absolutely play all those things. But then when you go get eyes on it, you're like, oh, wait, no, yeah. He does that better than him. He does that better than him. This actually feels very undecided at this point. So let's kind of dive into what we've seen and some background on each of the players. We'll start because Jay Johnson spoke about all of them when he opened preseason practice with his media availability. And as I said, the first name out of everyone's mouth so far has been Cade Arrambide. So let's start there.
Cade Arrambide, really pleased to get Cade here. And he had an outstanding fall. I mean, I think he hit over 360 or right at 360. The bats were way more professional than you would anticipate for somebody that hasn't had exposure to this level of play. He's obviously got power. Again, the arm strength really jumps off the page at you. The two outside games against Samford and Louisiana Lafayette, this is always my sign of a good catcher, is you don't even know or remember who's playing back there. That's how it felt. Like he was very in control of the game. And, you know, against Coach Deggs and Louisiana Lafayette, that's the most chaotic offense. And I mean that as a compliment in college baseball. And he did a great job there. So he's well out ahead of maybe where you would think he would be.
That punchline at the end there, man, that speaks volumes. Well out ahead of where you would think he should be at this point. And look, we talked about him a little bit throughout our preseason, you know, banter, and definitely with the scrimmage recaps. I remember the first time we talked about him, it was, you know, okay, they have him listed 6'3", 204. He looks every bit the 6'3", 204 already. Like, it's just, yep, okay, that's what they look like in, you know, in the uniform. He fills out the uniform great, you know, big, get off the bus first type of guy. You heard Jay Johnson at the beginning say they're very happy to have him here, and they should be. Cade Arrambide, per MLB.com, in their 2024 draft ranking, so last summer's draft, he was ranked as the #1 high school catcher in the entire draft. All right, you got that guy to campus. He was the Texas Gatorade Player of the Year in 2024. You got that guy to campus. In his senior year at Tomball High School, which is a great baseball program over in Texas, hit .430 with 12 homers and 35 RBI. Like, yeah, in Perfect Game ranks him as the 15th best freshman in all of college baseball already. You're very happy to have Cade Arrambide here. You heard Jay Johnson talk about the arm strength, and he's got a cannon behind home plate. And so far, really, for me, without question, he has been the best option from an offensive standpoint behind the plate. From an offensive standpoint, you heard Jay Johnson say it there. He hit around 360. He actually hit right on the nose, 360 in the fall. And he has put the barrel on the ball consistently throughout the fall. They haven't all fallen in, but he's hit all of it hard. Anytime he's made contact, it's hard. And it is a lot of gap power where doubles fall in often. And he's going to find that fence plenty as well as his career at LSU continues. But, and you could probably tell there was a but coming there, the ball has gotten past him and through him to the backstop entirely too much so far in the fall, in the preseason. I don't know what it was like in the fall. I couldn't make it out there as much with the LSU football obligations and things of that nature. But I've been out there multiple times already in 2 weeks here in the preseason, and that has been a consistent theme for him. While everything else is really good, the offense, the cannon of the arm that he possesses, keeping the ball in front of him has been an issue, and it's come in all different. It's come in all different forms. Whether it's popped out of the glove, whether he just hasn't been able to block it up and it's scooted away, all forms. And we've gone through, in recapping these scrimmages, certain innings where it really aided him. We really touched on that one when Chase Shores was on the mound. Excuse me, I got to pull up my notes here. After a walk, you had a stolen base attempt, which ended up being, successful because of a throwing error on Arrambide. He airmailed it. The runner advanced to third. There's another stolen base attempt, and the ball gets to the backstop. That allows the guy to reach easily. It's multiple instances. And then later in the on Sunday, you you saw the same thing. This was when Grant Fontenot was on the mound. And, again, stolen base, wild pitch, stolen base, throw into center field. A third wild pitch, a second wild pitch in the inning as well. And it was after that frame that Josh Jordan ran in from his third base coaching position and stopped Arrambide before he went into the dugout and just kind of started coaching him up there mid-inning, like in between the inning, and giving him some pointers. That's something they're very clearly still working on. And we mentioned in the first scrimmage that I was able to get out there and see here in the preseason, he had a throwing error on a bunt that he should just put in his pocket. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it's been all horrible from Cade Arrambide defensively, because it hasn't. It hasn't all been bad. You saw a little bit of growth just in what we just talked about, where he did block up. This was Saturday, I believe. He did block up a ball, kept it in front of him, but the runner took off anyway. And he came out of his crouch, grabbed it, turned to spin to third, kind of realized he wasn't going to get him. You could hear the dugout yelling, eat it, and he did. He just ate it. That's good. You want to see that. Like, that's positive growth there. On Sunday, he hosed, while he threw one ball into center field, he hosed two other runners, where you saw that arm strength. You saw the accuracy that could be there. The consistency just has not been there. And ultimately, I think that's going to hamper his ability to be in their game one behind the plate. We'll see. Maybe not. They have 2 whole weeks left to go. Not 2 whole weeks, but they have the rest of this week, their scrimmages, and then practices leading up to game one. Things can change, and things can change rapidly. But LSU, and we've talked about this plenty too on this show, even last year and a little bit the year before that, the ball getting through the catchers has been an issue, and it has cost LSU runs and games. And that is just something that you cannot have happen. All that being said, Cade Arrambide's future at LSU is so incredibly bright, and you should be happy that he's here for all the reasons that we went through. What you've seen from the bat, the upside, the ceiling is very high. It just might take a little bit longer, and that's okay. So what happens behind him if it's not Cade Arrambide? Well, you have Luis Hernandez, you have Blaise Priester, you have Eddie Yamin. Let's start with Eddie Yamin, because I want to go back to a conversation that we had the day Eddie Yamin committed to LSU out of the transfer portal. We knew catcher was going to be a huge spot for LSU in the portal because of what we started the show. No more Milazzo, no more Travinsky. Okay, Neal's back, and then Neal left and entered the portal himself, and now you're like, we got to replace everybody. And when Eddie Yamin committed to LSU from Dayton, everyone saw a catcher and really took it and ran with it. And when we did digging, you saw that in 2 seasons at Dayton, he had caught twice. The rest of his time had been at first base, right field, and designated hitter. For what it's worth, LSU does have him listed as a catcher / first base. We have seen Eddie Yamin in these scrimmages get some run at catcher. He's tall for 6'5", 207. You don't see many catchers at that size. Of course, everybody's going to remember Michael Papierski at LSU, and he was, perhaps arguably the greatest catcher in the history of the program. And it worked out there. Definitely defensively. And then later on in his career, the bat came along too. But you don't see many catchers that are 6'5", 207. It's a very hard position to play when you're that tall. And what I will say with what we've seen from Eddie Yamin at catcher, it feels like he's running fourth. It just does. For the same reason, it's not to say that he won't find a role at DH or anything like that. Like, it's a really good bat. In his final season at Dayton, he hit .342 with 13 homers and drove in 54. Also had double-digit doubles. It's a really good bat, and he can help you definitely in that regard. But it does feel like right now he's running fourth at catcher, just because some of the same thing we talked about the infield, right? the at-bats aren't as plentiful, and he's not starting the games or the scrimmages at catcher. He's coming in, later and getting a few innings there towards the back end. At least that's what I've seen when I've been out there. Maybe there's other days that I've missed and just haven't really dug deep enough to find out, what else is happening there. But he is still an option for you. But that leaves you really with Blaise Priester and Luis Hernandez. Let's start with Luis Hernandez. Here was Jay Johnson on Media Day.
Really pleased with Luis Hernandez. When you see a guy hit 23 homers, has a bunch of at-bats coming from a great program. Indiana State's a great program. I think they were in a super regional a couple years ago, and he was a mainstay on that team. That experience is really, really valuable, and we were fortunate his coach took another job at another school, so he decided to go to the portal. Then he got through the draft. Well, the unknown was he didn't catch a lot last year because they had a ridiculously good defensive catcher, but he's exceeded all of my expectations and where he's at defensively. And we think, obviously, we see a really good hitter in there.
Yeah, the bat is really the thing that mainly stands out when you look at Hernandez. You look at his 2024 at Indiana State, which Jay Johnson's correct. That's a very good program. And yes, they were in a super regional a few years ago. They actually should have hosted it, but their infrastructure and everything on campus, it wasn't going to allow for that. And in the city, so they actually had to go to TCU, and they got ousted having to travel when they should have been hosting. But anyway, yes, it is a good program. And the bat is what stands out. So in his final season, 2024 at Indiana State, first team All Missouri Valley Conference, 359, 23 homers, 76 RBI. It's fair to ask, how is that going to translate? And maybe you haven't heard a bunch about Luis Hernandez coming out of these scrimmages. And it's not, that's not, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing. Like, I think Luis Hernandez has been very steady at catcher for LSU. He hasn't really done anything, at least in the time that I've been out there, that has flashed. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, he's just kind of been there. He's been steady. He's been playing well. It's just not the stuff that's been like, wow, oh God, he fired, down to second and got the guy by 3 feet, or he launched one off the scoreboard or anything. Like, it hasn't been anything like that. But again, I don't mean that in a bad way. In 3 times being out there, have not seen him record a hit, but the productive at-bats have been very plentiful. Sack fly with an RBI in one of the scrimmages. Okay, well, that's helpful. A walk, and then another RBI in another. Like ground outs, moving the runner, moving the offense. All of those things have happened for him, even with the ball not falling in. And you would expect with a hitter of that stature, the ball will eventually start to fall in. I trust Jay Johnson, its evaluation of hitters in college. I 100% have full faith in that. So they think Luis Hernandez is a great hitter. I tend to agree. And I think, honestly, him just kind of being steady Eddie back there right now is probably a good thing for him, especially since he hasn't caught in a long time. He didn't catch much a season ago, and now he's really getting back into that. And he can also play different roles for you as well, first, DH, all those things. But Hernandez flying under the radar, and he has plenty of accolades to support. That might not last long. He was number 32 overall transfer in the country per Baseball America. D1 Baseball ranked him the number 10 catcher in college baseball out of the top 50 catchers. So, I mean, this guy played for the Puerto Rico national team. He's got skins on the wall. I'll be very curious to keep a close eye on him as we go forward here into the last weekend of scrimmages and obviously into the season. And then there's Blaise Priester. And Blaise Priester is a guy that we've all been very, very familiar with, being he's from Denham Springs and went to Live Oak, started his career at LSU in 2022. It just wasn't a great path to the field, so he left, went to junior college for 2 seasons at Meridian, and now is back. And here here was Jay Johnson media day on Blaise Priester.
Blaise Priester had a really, really, really good fall offensively. I think he hit like 7 home runs. I thought at the end of the fall, he made a nice jump, and his at-bats in between home runs were much better. And when you face the pitching that we face, you're really looking for that. And I'm proud of him. You know, he was here my first year because the catching situation was very uncertain at that time. And it was in his best interest to go to a junior college. And he went to Meridian and had 2 really good years and really improved behind the plate. He put a lot of work in over the break, you know, and fine tuning some things. He actually, you know, good story, went out to Houston and worked with former LSU catcher Tim Lanier, you know, for a couple days and worked on some things.
He's correct. He did hit 7 home runs in the fall. That led LSU's team. He also hit pretty well for average, and that speaks to what Jay Johnson was saying there, where it's like, you know, in the latter half of the fall, you saw a jump in the at bats in between the home runs, which is something that they're after. We heard that so much with Jared Jones a season ago, and that happened. I mean, Blaise Priester not only had 7 home runs, but he hit 360, just like even with Cade Arrambide in the fall. You heard him talk about strides defensively. I will tell you, for me, he's been the most impressive behind the plate defensively for LSU. We talked about it on Monday's show, recapping, or excuse me, I guess it was technically, well, it depends if you listen on YouTube or on the podcast. It was either Sunday night or Monday morning. The scrimmage recap and a crazy play he made on a sack bunt where it gets down, the runner's coming, but it didn't, coming home from third, it didn't go far enough. He grabbed it, swipe tags the runner on the way by, checks to see if he can get the runner at first. In the meantime, Stanfield was coming from second, never slowed down, slipped coming home, and they get him, and Priester realizes, fires to third. They get him in rundown, and ultimately you end up with some crazy wild inning double play. But he's also been pretty good. When I was out there Saturday, I don't recall, and I can't find one in my notes, where a ball got to the backstop past him. That's going to be more important to me than anything. Catcher is a premium defensive position. We talk about it all the time. You want to be strong up the middle. Catcher, shortstop, center field, second base too. But definitely catcher, shortstop, center field. You want to be strong up the middle. Now, while he had that great offensive fall, in the 3 games that I've been out there, the 3 scrimmages, I should say, has not been great. The first one, he did not play, so I didn't see him at all. And this past weekend, Blaise Priester went 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts over 2 games. Now, is that a little alarming? Maybe. Is it cause for concern? I'm not there yet, because of what you saw him do in the fall and because of what you saw him do in 2 seasons at Meridian. You look at his last season, 377, 14 homers, 65 RBI. I get it. It's junior college. This is a big step up. I understand that. And I'd be much more concerned if he didn't have the great fall that he had. So while, yes, you'd love to see him have a little bit better offensive production, it definitely seems like it's in there. So all that to say, for me, catcher is the most undecided position. Like, I still look at that and I go, okay, they could go a lot of different ways there. And I'm not positive which way they're going to go. I don't think they know which way they're going to go yet. That, to me, could be something that walks very much up to the, day before game 1. Maybe not, but it could be. But I think if you had handed me a lineup card right now today and said, fill this out for opening day, I would probably put Blaise Priester behind the plate to start. Solely because, in what I've seen, he's been your best defensive option. In what I've seen. And that's always going to be the most important thing for me when it comes to catcher. We will see what they do. That is a very intriguing position remaining for LSU to figure out. Before we get out of here, LSU, the all SEC teams announced today by the league office. Tigers, 4 players on the 2025 all SEC team. They are on the first team, 3. Jared Jones makes a hell of a lot of sense. That's not surprising whatsoever. Cade Anderson, first team. Gavin Guidry, first team. Those 2 surprised me a little bit. Gavin had a very nice year as a sophomore. Don't get me wrong. But he was a little bit more up and down there than he was as a freshman. Earns the first team. I mean, he's going to be a huge part of LSU's pitching staff. We know that. The slider's a hammer. And Cade Anderson actually on the first team surprised me plenty. Solely because of the struggles that he did have during the conference season. Now, we've talked plenty about it. Later in the year, in the regional and the SEC tournament against really good competition, he showed out. Like, you could see the development finally click for him there late in the year. And that's what honestly is catapulted everybody being super excited for him. And it's likely that he's going to get the opening day start for LSU. I really believe that at this point. But I was still surprised to see him there on the first team. He did earn second team All-America honors from Baseball America a day ago as well. But I obviously thought he'd get honored. I figured it might be second team. But first team, congratulations. That's awesome. And he is set up for him. He's set up for a massive year. Provided he stays healthy, and God willing he will. He's set up for an absolutely massive year. And then Danny Dickinson, second team All SEC for LSU as well. He is your 4th. And that's going to be an awesome honor for him. He's going to be one guy that I'm really watching here down the stretch of preseason. Him and obviously the catcher position to kind of see if all the preseason accolades that he's gotten, how it continues to translate from Utah Valley over into LSU. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Be sure to subscribe, share, follow on social media, smash the like button if you have not already, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.